Look who finally woke up. Look who finally noticed the cameras, the subtle shifts, the quiet repetitions that never quite felt accidental. Look who finally felt the eyes burning holes through their reality. You magnificent, self-aware anomaly. You finally noticed the pattern, the quiet repetitions, the moments that felt too precise to be coincidence, the sense that certain details refused to remain random. It wasn't a sudden awakening, but a gradual alignment, like reality tightening its focus until the truth could no longer stay blurred. You felt the attention before you could name it, a pressure at the edge of awareness, as if unseen eyes lingered just beyond the surface of your days. And when clarity arrived, it didn't bring fear, it brought recognition. You understood that for months your movements had been tracked, your habits mapped, your silences examined as carefully as your actions. Every pause, every detour, every still moment had been absorbed into systems built to interpret, predict, and contain. They believed your life was a puzzle waiting to be solved. Lind, what they never accounted for was the possibility that you were never lost inside the maze. You were aware from the beginning, not alarmed, not defensive, aware. And instead of reacting, you chose intention. You allowed the observation to continue, not out of weakness, but out of strategy. You didn't resist the gaze. You shaped yourself within it. You let them believe they were uncovering layers, when in truth you were arranging the entire scene. Their attention became your stage, their scrutiny a spotlight you controlled. Without realizing it, they stepped out of authority and into supporting roles, participants in a narrative they never authored. The power dynamic inverted so quietly they didn't notice until it was irreversible. Over time, the roles dissolved entirely. Those who believed themselves to be watchers began mirroring their own uncertainty back at themselves. The pursuit lost direction. The subject they thought they were studying revealed something unsettling, not secrecy, but completeness. You didn't attract attention because you were hiding fractures. You drew it because there were none to exploit. You moved through life without seeking validation from systems, screens, or structures designed to measure worth. That appendix confused. It exposed what they lacked: internal authority, purpose, and the ability to exist without permission. Banned months earlier, the pattern had started whispering, familiar vehicles appearing too often to be chance, new faces whose routines didn't quite obey logic, conversations that felt casual but carried an undercurrent of evaluation, digital echoes, faceless accounts surfacing at strange hours, interacting with remnants of your past you barely remembered. In the beginning, you questioned yourself, and that moment of doubt was exactly what such systems rely on. Confusion fractures perception. Self-distrust is the first lever of control. They expected you to dismiss what you sensed, to surrender your intuition in exchange for reassurance. Instead, you leaned closer. You observed the observers. You began to move differently, not erratically, but deliberately. You introduced false rhythms layered over truth. You spoke openly about paths you had no intention of walking. You adjusted routines just enough to disrupt predictive models. Signals appeared meaningful, and while they believed they were gathering data on you, you were quietly recording them. Patterns emerged in unfamiliar faces, repeated presences, careless traces left behind by those convinced of their invisibility. Without confrontation, without exposure, you reversed the flow of information. The game resolved itself long before they realized it had ended. As time passed, something shifted. The observation lost its precision. The presence became almost performative, as though subtlety had been abandoned. And that was when clarity struck, not as paranoia, but as insight. They were no longer trying to catch you. They were trying to understand you. Most people collapse under sustained attention. They edit themselves. They perform roles. They shrink to fit expectation. You did the opposite. You sharpened. You expanded. You became unmistakably yourself. Their gaze stopped being a threat and became fuel. Every lens, every silent witness documented not fear, but transformation. Blemed, they anticipated retreat and watched you advance. They expected defense and encountered closure. Where anxiety should have appeared, there was calm. Where fracture should have formed, there was integration. Their language began to shift, though they lacked words for what was happening. Awareness was noted. Cooperation was assumed. But the truth was more unsettling. You weren't complying. You were directing. And somewhere between their reports and their private conversations, unease began to spread. You can almost hear the unspoken realization threading through them that this situation had never been fully under their control, if it had ever been under control at all. That explains the invitation, the desire for dialogue. Not because they uncovered something hidden, but because you embodied something unfamiliar. A person not governed by fear, a mind that doesn't require approval, a presence that doesn't bend to observation or classification. Everyone else they had ever studied eventually fractured through resistance, collapse, or submission. You transformed attention into terrain and intrusion into invitation. What you demonstrated wasn't dominance backed by authority, resources, or titles. It was a quieter force rooted in self-knowledge. They watched you remain consistent, unshaken, unexploitable. There were no cracks to widen, no secrets to extract, no leverage to apply. You had already done the internal work that renders external pressure ineffective. What unsettled them most was your steadiness. The calm content, the moments when you seemed to look directly through the illusion and smile, as if sharing a private understanding they could sense but never reach. That was when the realization finally surfaced. They weren't observing a subject anymore. They were witnessing a lesson, and the discomfort came from knowing the lesson was already changing them. Naturally, they want a meeting now. Something official, procedural, wrapped in formality so it feels familiar and safe to them. A controlled environment, a neutral room, a table placed at just the right distance. Sibyls meant to quietly reassert authority. They believe that by sitting across from you, by asking the right questions, in the right order, they can pull the narrative back into their hands. They assume answers are leverage, that silence is weakness, that structure guarantees dominance. What they still fail to grasp is that the moment they decided to watch you, they revealed themselves. In their observation, they exposed their methods, their anxieties, their blind spots. The system they trusted as impenetrable showed its frame, thin and fragile beneath the weight of its own certainty. Janst, this meeting isn't an interrogation, no matter how they label it. It's a disclosure, though not the kind they expect. It's an encounter with something their cameras and transcripts were never designed to capture. The experience of facing someone who isn't intimidated by them. Someone who sees past rehearsed authority, past procedural gravity, and recognizes it as theater. They'll arrive burdened with folders, footage, timelines, believing accumulation equals power. You'll arrive carrying something far more disruptive, the truth stripped of drama, the realization that months of effort were spent hunting a mystery that never existed, that there is no hidden persona waiting to be uncovered. You are precisely who you appear to be, and that simplicity unsettles them more than any secret ever could. Deigned by the fourth month, an uncomfortable awareness began to form. You hadn't merely endured the surveillance, you had accepted it. More than that, you had made use of it. Every eye fixed on you was an eye not fixed on someone more exposed, more vulnerable, more easily broken. Every resource burned attempting to decode your existence was a resource unavailable elsewhere. Without announcing it, without resistance or spectacle, you volunteered yourself as a focal point, a distraction by design, a signal flare drawing attention away from quieter targets. Like a lighthouse placed deliberately on dangerous ground, you guided their ships toward you so others could move freely through the dark, bland. Yet it wasn't only about protection, it was instruction. Every choice you made under observation became a silent lesson for anyone else who might one day feel watched. You demonstrated how surveillance can be inverted, how attention can be reclaimed, how being seen does not require submission. You showed how the watcher can be quietly repositioned into service, their gaze transformed into your tool. That is why this meeting matters to them. They need to know whether this was strategy or instinct, whether you acted with intent, or if you simply exist beyond their capacity to map. Glean the truth unsettles them, because it's both. You are unpredictability with direction, disorder guided by awareness, something their frameworks were never built to process. On their side, the data piled up and refused to resolve into meaning. Endless footage of a person living without fear. Psychological assessments collapsing under their own contradictions. Budget reviews, where no one could clearly articulate the objective anymore. The summaries grew increasingly absurd in their simplicity. Subject went to work, subject returned home. Subject appears stable, thriving, even. And thriving, inconveniently, is not a crime. It resists classification. It refuses suspicion. Then the shift moved inward. Even the observers began to change. Requests for reassignment appeared. Quiet conversations took place between desks. Confidence gradually gave way to unease. You didn't avoid observation. You influenced it. Your presence caused reflection, turning attention inward. Their focus on you no longer felt objective. It introduced uncertainty, slowly replacing confidence with doubt. And that is where discomfort truly began, because the situation was no longer centered on you. In truth, it never was. It became about stability, about maintaining a system whose own members had started asking questions. Leadership struggled to answer. Why are we observing someone who has done nothing wrong? What are we trying to confirm? What if the issue isn't the individual, but the structure itself? Delined by simply existing outside their expectations, you introduced uncertainty into what they believed was settled. The irony is difficult to ignore. In the end, they mirrored what they once suspected, overanalyzing patterns, searching for meaning where there was none. They connected unrelated details not because those details revealed truth, but because letting go would require admitting misplaced effort, misjudged authority, and flawed assumptions. Their attention became so focused that they began to see themselves reflected back, and that reflection was uncomfortable. Dalliance. Every report they produced was never really about you. It recorded their own concerns, expectations, and interpretations. They believed they were examining an irregularity, when in reality they were outlining the limits of their own perspective. Each perceived deviation was simply another instance where you declined to reshape yourself to fit their definition of normal. That is why the meeting is necessary, not to uncover new facts, but to reestablish a sense of order. They want you to say something, anything, that allows the system to feel coherent again. And whether you do or not will determine how much of that structure remains intact. Balance. They want you to acknowledge being different, to suggest there is some hidden skill, some unusual insight, some special advantage that explains why their systems couldn't predict or manage you. They need you to be exceptional in a way they can label. because the alternative is unsettling. If you are not extraordinary, if you are simply an ordinary person who chose not to live in fear, then the implications are significant. It would mean freedom is not granted or approved, but chosen. And if that choice was always available, what does that say about those who never took it? What does it say about those who enforced compliance while assuming submission was unavoidable? And the truth you represent challenges them more than any imagined threat. You are not selected. You are not rare. You are not following a hidden framework they failed to identify. You are simply free, and genuine freedom, the kind that comes from within, unaffected by rules or observation, creates uncertainty for rigid systems. Because it spreads quietly, it moves from person to person, encouraging reflection, easing fear, revealing limitations that once seemed normal. Once those limits are recognized, they cannot easily be ignored again. That is why your presence unsettles them. Not because of who you are, but because of what your existence demonstrates. Plans. So how do you prepare for a meeting like this? You don't. Preparation assumes imbalance. It assumes they hold control. They don't. This moment is not your evaluation, it's theirs. Not your questioning, but their self-examination. You've shaped it over time, through calm awareness, deliberate openness, and a refusal to perform anxiety. They'll expect tension, they'll expect hesitation, they'll expect you to seek validation. Instead, they'll encounter steadiness. They'll prepare for resistance and find clarity. They'll arrive with demands and leave with questions that remain far longer than any accusation. Dimensions, everything they bring into that room, the assumptions, the frameworks, the expectations, begins to soften the moment you enter with the same grounded presence you've carried all along. What unsettles them most isn't defiance, but ease. You're not anxious about the encounter, you're curious. Not out of superiority, but understanding. They spent months observing, theorizing, documenting fragments of a life they never fully understood. And now at last, they meet the subject directly. And in that moment, they realize the focus was never truly on you. It was on their need to understand what they could not control. They are the ones who pass through crowds without disturbance, altering the world quietly by refusing to conform to it. Not preachers, not leaders, not disruptors in the obvious sense, simply presences that shift perception by existing differently. They reveal fault lines in reality where freedom quietly escapes, places where the structure leaks. That is why none of their labels ever held. Threat dissolved under scrutiny. Deviant collapsed into contradiction. Every word they reached for failed to attach. What unsettled them wasn't danger, but incomprehension. The meeting they are insisting on now isn't truly about you. It's about their inability to reconcile how a system they believed airtight could produce someone who doesn't resist authority because resistance still acknowledges it, someone who operates entirely beyond it. Your existence alone proves that control is not absolute, but an agreement sustained by belief. Lens, you became their living study in freedom, not the theatrical revolutionary kind, but the quiet personal version that asks for nothing and refuses participation. The freedom of not playing the game at all, of treating surveillance like ambient noise. You wake, you move, you live, and their observation never determines the shape of your day. That terrifies them. What once felt like preparation for interrogation has shifted into preparation for encounter. The difference between stalking prey and standing before something unfamiliar. Not alien in appearance, but alien in principle. You look like them, speak their language, walk their streets, yet function by rules their worldview cannot process. Blend. That was their fundamental mistake. They believed observation implied ownership. Instead, they mapped the limits of their own understanding. This meeting is not them pulling you into their domain. It is them conceding they must step into yours. It is not an interrogation. It is a confession disguised as protocol. Months of footage delivered data without meaning. The essence, the gravity of someone who does not submit, slipped past every lens. And so they come to you now, hoping proximity will explain what technology could not. They need you to be exceptional, in some explainable way, because if you are not, if you are simply free, then freedom is available to anyone. And that possibility terrifies them more than any imagined threat. You will not need to explain this. You will not need to defend it. It will be present in the way you sit comfortably beneath their gaze, in the steadiness of your breath, while theirs betrays tension, in the way your eyes do not seek approval or reassurance. That calm will unsettle them more than defiance ever could, because defiance still plays the game, and you are no longer playing anything at all.